attacks are preventable, but Middle East organisations have been severely impacted due to lack of preparation and reactive response. That's just one of a number of lines to come out of the 8th edition of CyberTech Global, a leading international exhibition and conference for the cyber industry, which is being held for the very first time right here in Dubai. It concludes a little later on today. The event's being hosted by the Dubai Electronic Security Centre, or the DESC. To tell us more about the significance of us hosting this event and also some of the issues being discussed, we are joined on the line and on Microsoft Teams by the founder and the CEO of CyberKnight. Avinash Advani joins us this morning. Avinash, good morning to you.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Very well indeed. Really appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for joining us. I know it's a busy time for you.
It's my pleasure.
And all the can we just start with the CyberTech Global, the significance of this event being hosted in Dubai for the very first time? Is that significant in the industry as a whole?
Absolutely. Recently with the launch of the Dubai cybersecurity strategy by His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, this was sort of a pivotal event to then happen shortly to really highlight the significance of cybersecurity and cyber resilience within the Middle East region. So very well timed and absolutely significant event to have at the moment.
In terms of ransomware and in terms of attacks, we hear quite often that Middle East organisations are often targeted. Why, Avinash, is that the case? Why are companies here targeted or more susceptible than others around the world?
So it's not that the Middle East is the only region in the world that's been targeted by ransomware. Most parts of the world are targeted by ransomware. And ransomware attackers are going after the obvious, right? Money. The Middle East is a hotbed for ransomware and malware attacks in general, Tom, primarily because there are a lot of geopolitical issues. It is a prime area for the oil and gas industry. There's a lot of critical infrastructure. And so attackers are typically looking at either exfiltrating sensitive data or going after where there's a lot of money or doing damage which can cause political issues. And so this part of the world has always been a hotbed for cybersecurity threat actors, and ransomware is no different than any other malware that's impacting this part of the world.
In terms of, and before we scare too many of our listeners and viewers, how many of these attacks can be prevented? What are the statistics and the research tell us about that?
So the good news about ransomware is that it is actually almost 90% preventable. And I say 90% because, attackers are constantly innovating and trying to come up with new zero-day attacks or new ways to come in and breach defenses. So there's no such thing as 100%, but 90% actually of the ransomware attacks are preventable by foundational security, by very simple governance and assessments and the basic tools required to cover ransomware across the attack cycle. You are able to actually prevent ransomware in 90% of the cases, according to Gartner.
Obviously, it comes in so many different guises. We're told that the phishing is the #1 vehicle to deliver ransomware. Now, Avinash, I'm old school. You say you want to go fishing, Tom. I'm on a boat with a rod and a reel. It's one of those phrases that I sort of nod out and think I understand, but I don't really, if I'm going to admit it to you face to face. Can you explain to me and others out there what is phishing and how it can be prevented?
Sure. So there's various different types of phishing, but phishing essentially is when an email is sent to you that contains a malicious link or bad link or some sort of bad malware contained in the email, that when the user actually clicks on that email, unknowingly, intentionally, or intentionally, they are then downloading some sort of malicious or bad payload or going to some sort of bad website that will then be the starting point of an attack, be it ransomware or any other malware.
And is that easily preventable?
Absolutely. So first of all, the biggest problem with phishing and malware in general is that, there's a human involved, right? And the end users, unfortunately, do remain the weakest link in ransomware attacks or in cybersecurity in general. If you take just one quarter in 2020, I think there were around 2.5 million phishing attacks that were detected across the Middle East, and this is from Oman through Egypt. And what you find is with these phishing attacks, 7 in 10 of those malware breaches or ransomware attacks originated with the human knowingly, unknowingly, unintentionally clicking on a link that could look like it was authentic coming from their CEO or their executive management team, and so they wouldn't know otherwise. But actually the email was bad. And this attack surface of humans and employees has increased in the pandemic, obviously, because of all the proliferation of people working from home. And so it is possible to prevent phishing by having, of course, automated tools that are able to detect if it's a phishing email, but also to create awareness within the employee base and the community to help them understand what a phishing email could potentially look like.
Ransomware would suggest that there is ransom payments to be paid at some point. How many people make those payments? And I suppose the question I'm asking is, are the bad guys making money from this?
Whoa. Let me put it this way. Ransomware has been around for 30 years. I think it emerged in around 1989, right? Around that time. And for the last 30 years, it's only been getting better and better and better, right? Back when it first started, it took many, many, many years to come up with a ransomware attack. Today, they've got these ransomware as a service toolkits that people can just leverage. And so the payouts are getting bigger and bigger. If you just look at last year compared to this year in the pandemic, the payouts on average went from about $80,000 on average to about $178,000, according to various different reports and research. So more than doubled just during the pandemic. And that's a lot of money, right? And so absolutely the payouts are getting bigger, and they're getting easier and easier to actually deploy ransomware. And so more and more people are trying to do it.
I read it again, and again, apologise for my sort of Luddite behaviour here, but I always see it as a bit of a game of cat and mouse, because we often hear about, you know, the efforts that that those that are working to prevent ransomware are implementing, be they authorities, be they organisations or otherwise, and yet the ransomware attackers are also keeping one step ahead as well. Is it a game of cat and mouse? Is it a question of the good guys not being able to catch up with the bad guys and vice versa?
Absolutely. And this is something that applies to cybersecurity in general, right? We're always playing catch up. As long as there are humans involved in the cyber attacker world, right, we're always going to be playing catch up, because you need to think like an attacker, and technology is always trying to catch up to attackers' new innovative techniques. And so really, as the attackers are changing and shifting their techniques in ransomware and in malware in general, the only way to really detect and stop this ransomware is if you know what the attacker is going after. And so it's important to think like an attacker and deceive them into thinking that they can go to certain places. You need to know where your sensitive data is, where are your crown jewels that you can protect, so that when they do penetrate, if they do penetrate your defenses, you know exactly the tools and techniques and procedures they're using, so that you can actually stop them from going after your real data. And go ahead, sorry.
No, well, unfortunately, we're out of time on this occasion, Avinash, but thankfully, I was just going to say, thankfully, we've got good guys like you out there fighting the good fight. So long may you continue fighting that good fight.
It's our pleasure. It's our pleasure to help. Thank you very much, Tom.
Avinash Advani is the founder and the CEO of CyberKnight, giving us a little insight into what's been talked about and discussed at the 8th edition of the Cybertech Global, which finally has come to a conclusion here in Dubai a little later on today. Okay, time now is 9.